So I did a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Liquid Crystal without type restrictions, and it wasn't as easy as it sounds. As per standard Nuzlocke rules, if a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead, and if we lose a Pokemon battle, we lose the game. In addition to this, we're not allowed to use battle items, and overleveling Pokemon is strictly prohibited. And so our journey into Johto finally begins, where we meet Professor Elm, who wants to give us our very first Pokemon in exchange for meeting Mr. Pokemon, who's discovered a really mysterious egg, but we have to go and retrieve it for him. So we get Cyndaquil, which we call Klim, and make our way to Professor Pokemon's house and receive the egg. On our way back though, we encounter our rival for the first time, who it turns out stole a Totodile from Professor Elm's lab. So we beat the Totodile down by just leering it into submission and then tackling it for a crit. And then we head back to Little Root Town to deliver the egg and see what all the commotion's about. From this point on, we get our running shoes and learn to run, which means we can run our way to Route 29 and get our very first encounter of the Nuzlocke, which turns out to be Serenity the Centret, who actually ends up being a really good encounter, so there's no reason to sleep on Serenity just yet. This is shortly followed up by Philip the Phanpy, who's a whopping encounter we get on Route 46, and Leia the Ladybug, who we catch on Route 30. But the piece ends pretty quickly there because we're approached by another trainer who's destined to be another rival in this Rom Hack. His name is Zane and he has the most based starter Pokemon you could probably think of, which is a Porygon. But unfortunately for us, his game plan wasn't the most interesting because all he seemed to do was change type with conversion and spam agility. So after taking a little bit of damage on Cyndaquil, we get Philip to come in and wrap up the rest. And as a cheeky reward, we still get 2 more encounters, one in Dark Cave and one in Route 31, which sees the introduction of Steve the Spinarak and Zaina the Zubat. After trenching through Route 31 and finally assembling a full team of 6, we make it to Violet City. But before we attempt our first gym badge, we've instead got to go head to head with the Sprout Tower. This is where I get swarmed by an unholy amount of bald dudes and initiate the Bellsprout Massacre of 2025. But those lost Bellsprout souls didn't go to waste, as they gave both Klim and Serenity enough XP to evolve into Furret and Quilava. After reaching the summit, we defeat the bald boss and catch Gary, the Ghastly, a key encounter for later on in the Nuzlocke. And after this, we finally make our way to the Violet City gym. Once we hit the gym, we lead with Philip due to his natural bulk and hope that that's enough for the rest of the fight. But after having an abnormal amount of mud thrown at him, we switch into Klim to clean up the Pidgey. Scared of infinite mud slapping though, and the type advantage it has over Quilava, we switch Klim out for Serenity for some big Fury Swipes damage, and hoping that a quick attack will pluck the remaining feathers off of Faulkner's Pidgeotto. Luckily for us, we do manage to connect with the quick attack despite being -2 accuracy from mud slaps, and that's enough to seal the deal and kill Pidgeotto. And with that, we've got our first badge, the Zephyr badge. Now we've officially gotten our gym challenge started, it's encounter time. As we venture onwards towards Azalea Town, we stumble onto a couple of new additions to the squad, in Horatio the Hoot Hoot and George the Geodude in Union Cave, a perfect counter to Bugsy's pesky bug types. We finally reach Azalea Town and meet Kurt, but he tells us that Team Rocket are disturbing the Slowpoke in Slowpoke Well. But before we go and help, we'll peep Ilex Forest for another encounter, where we find Sally the Shroomish, who quickly becomes a vital member of our crew. We head on down to the well and put an end to Team Rocket's silly plans and catch, well, you guessed it, a Slowpoke. Before we dive into the bug hive, we get some last minute grinding in and see Xena timely evolve into a Golbab, which becomes pretty MVP. With that, we're ready to tackle Bugsy. We lead in with Xena due to her dual type resistance against bug types, as he leads his Metapod, which isn't really long for this world and falls down to 1 wing attack. He quickly realizes he's in trouble and sends out his ace, Scyther, straight away, which comfortably takes a wing attack, but fortunately for us, we do just over half. This means that he's not too high in HP for Bugsy to start super potioning, and is guaranteed to die on the next one. Finally, he fires out Beedrill, which predictably can't handle the power of Xena's bulky wings and instantly drops, and with that, we've got our second badge, the Hive badge. Now that we've picked the legs off of Bugsy's creepy crawlies, we're officially allowed to move on to Ilex Forest. This is where I have the pleasure of chasing a supposed Farfetch'd around for about 20 minutes and slowly lose my mind and descend into madness. Once we finally reunite him with his trainer, we're given the HM cut and therefore the green light to head to Goldenrod, but first we bump into Monica the Mankey, another key encounter for later on. When we finally reach Johto's capital, Goldenrod City, we get some last minute levels in before hunting down Whitney, which sees Sally evolve into a Breloom, again another MVP going forward. We finally arrive at Whitney, and you could say that she's not looking so good. Bruh. But that doesn't make it any less scary. Whitney predictably leads her Hellspawn, Miltank, so we lead our new champion in Breloom, just so we have the type advantage. She goes for a stomp and immediately catches an effect spore, putting it to sleep, helping make this battle an absolute doozy. While I use Leech Seed so we can recoup any HP if we begin to get swept by a rollout. The Miltank blissfully sleeps while we punch her in the gut 1 or 2 more times for the KO. Knowing she's dead at this point, she throws a Clefairy our way as a sacrificial peace offering, who quickly gets sent to the Shadow Realm. And voila, the plain badge is ours. Beyond Goldenrod lies Route 35, and one of my favourite parts of Johto, the bug catching contest. But to my absolute horror and dismay, it turns out they've cancelled it, which means no Scyther or Pinsir for your boy. Things go from bad to worse though when we're jumped by Psychic Marcus and his apparent Giga Chad Kadabra, whose Psybeam hits like an absolute truck and confuses our Furret. At this point in the fight, we have no real choice but to stay in and get some chip, since our whole team likely dies to 2 Psybeams right now. It's a 50-50 on the confusion, and unfortunately, we hit ourselves and we die, and lose arguably our second strongest Pokemon. Klim comes in and finishes off the Kadabra, and we win, but at what cost? So with a man down, it's time to reshake up the team a little bit, and with that sees the introduction of Gary, the Ghastly. Before we continue on, we get a little bit of grinding done, which sees both Gary and George evolve into Graveler and Haunter. With this, we charge onto Ecruteak and encounter Axel for the first time, who's chasing down Team Saturn, another power-hungry generic set of bad guys who are hell-bent on finding Latias and Latios. We're told to go back to Little Root to save the Professor, so they kindly make me run all the way back to the start of the game, just to dispatch a couple of noobs. Now with that all out the way, we've got the green light to enter Ecruteak. I quickly scour the area for a couple of extra encounters before heading straight to the Kimono Girls, 5 Eevee Brain trainers who'll give me surf if I beat them all. Since Morty's absent from the gym, we've got to investigate the burnt tower, which is filled with nothing but smoke and bad vibes, and also apparently our rival. Unfortunately, our rival doesn't put up much of a fight, and we sidesweep him pretty quickly. And with that, we're able to go downstairs and discover 3 super secret magical dogs, and a coughing. It's up to you to decide which one you find more impressive. We're finally able to enter Morty's gym, and just when you think my bad day can't get any worse, I literally fall through the floor for about 30 minutes straight.
I have been falling for 30 minutes!
We finally make it to Morty though in his endless supply of ghastly evolutions. The first falls quickly and easily to a bite from Xena, but he decides to go gung-ho pretty quickly and bring out his final boss, Gengar. I choose to stay in and try and confuse it because I'm confident that I can take a hit, but a Shadow Ball does a dangerous amount. I think I can deliver another attack and decide to go for a wing attack, but he decides not to attack this time and decides to mean look us, which is terrible because wing attack severely underperforms and he snaps out confusion right away. We do dodge a hypnosis, but only to miss the KO in return, which sees him use a hyper potion, and from that point I know that this is going to get really tough. A bite does a solid chunk, but eventually we get put to sleep, which is literally a death sentence for Xena, and we're taken out by a high roll Shadow Ball. From here we have no one who can really step up, so I go with Klim hoping an Ember might do something, and he takes a huge amount of damage from a Shadow Ball, but luckily we do get the burn. Knowing he's out of potions, I switch into Sally to take a hit and let Gengar die to the burn so I don't lose Klim as well. The entire time we have our Haunter just sitting in the back waiting to come in, but it never feels safe to switch in with Shadow Balls looming. So we stay in with Sally and go for a Stun Spore, and then switch into Simon, who in hindsight was just as risky, but he curses himself and goes down to a Surf. Finally, he sends in his last Haunter, so we go back into Sally knowing that her bulk can take any hit from a Haunter, and then we just spam him with Leech Seeds and Para Hacks, and then eventually spam Mega Drain for the eventual kill. So after a long and grueling battle, we eventually beat Morty and obtain the Fog Badge. With Morty wiped out, we begin to move to Olivine City, but before we can battle Jasmine for our 5th badge, we've got to find some medicine for a sick Ampharos, which means we've got to now head to Siamwood City, but not before catching Henry, the Horsey, in Olivine Harbour, and Mickey, the Magnemite, in Hollowed Cave. After swiftly drowning about 50 swimmers, we finally reach Siamwood City and grab the secret medicine, but while we're here we have a free pass to challenge Chuck and his delinquent duo of fighting types. He leads with his signature ace, Poliwrath, so I lead our new addition, Pippa, to try and have the flying type advantage. I start by throwing some sand at him to try and prevent any unwanted dynamic punches.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
And he returns the favour by trying to drown us. At this point I just YOLO and decide to risk it all and keep lowering his evasion, and it pays off. He gets to the point where he's stuck and can't land any attacks whatsoever, so I switch into Gary to beat his Mind Reader Dynamic Punch combo, before quickly putting him to sleep and killing him with a super effective Dream Eater. Next up is his monkey with a migraine, Primate, who can't touch Gary in any meaningful way, so we just Shadow Punch him for a couple of turns before picking up the kill for our 5th badge, the Wake badge. With Chuck out the way, we head back to the lighthouse and heal the Ampharos, and get ambushed by Axel on the way out. His first 2 members get sideswept by Sally and her insistent sucking, but in retaliation he sends out an Arcanine with Heatwave and Frustration, which is unironically frustrating. After George whittles him down, Pippa comes in and cleans up the kill, and his follow-up in Hitmonlee, which can't handle a single fly. But just when we think we're in the clear, he sends in his spherical ball of death, Shelgon, who comfortably takes a fly and decides to Dragon Dance on us. I switch back into Sally because I fear that we could get swept if we don't paralyze it. Before we do though, we take an insanely strong double edge and we miss our stun spore. Now we have to pray that he throws, and he does, by choosing to go for a crunch and subsequently getting paralyzed. From here he catches a few paras in a row, and luckily George comes in and sweeps up the rest, and luckily we just about make it out alive. Before going to the gym, we do see a triple evolution, giving the team some much needed power before going and fighting Jasmine. Jasmine turns out though to be nothing more than a free pass. Her Magnemite swiftly drops to a single magnitude, and her ace, Steelix, struggles to keep up with a barrage of surfs, even though it's no sunny day. In an attempt to keep Steelix alive, she switches it out into Magneton, who can't keep up and gets dismantled quickly by Sally and a Sky Uppercut. With this, Simon's clear to come back in and finish up the Steelix and finish up the battle and earn ourselves our 6th badge, the Mineral badge. We then press on to Mahogany Town, where we help Lance clean up Team Rocket and some evil radio frequencies which are driving Pokemon insane, and with that done we challenge an old man in a fridge freezer for our 7th badge. He leads with his Seal, who can't break Simon's bulk and slowly dies to a couple of confusions. His Glalie, however, comes in and forces Simon out with a Shadow Ball, so Klim comes in return to turn up the heat and slowly take it out with a couple of Flame Wheels. In retaliation though, he sends out his Piloswine, who forces us out with the threat of an Earthquake. But it turns out that even Simon's massive bulk can't handle 2 earthquakes, which puts us in a huge predicament, because here we're forced to switch into a type-resisted EQ and pray to the Divine Lords that either a Sky Uppercut is a KO, or he misses a potential Blizzard on Sally. But unfortunately, we get a really low roll, and we're one-shotted by a 70% Blizzard. Gary comes into the fold though and puts it to sleep with a Hypnosis, and gradually grinds it down with a couple of Shadow Balls. Lastly, Dugong joins the fight and suffers the exact same fate as Piloswine, and dies after a couple of Shadow Balls. With a man down, we begrudgingly win our 7th badge, the Glacier badge. With 7 badges down, we've got 1 more to go, but before that we've got to make 1 more return trip to Goldenrod, although we've got to adjust the team just before we do so, as we need to find a suitable replacement for Sally, which comes in the form of Monica the Mankey, who we quickly see evolve into a headstrong primate. With that, it's onwards to Goldenrod, where after a myriad of tedious puzzles and rocket grunts, we finally reach the executive and put an end to Team Rocket's pesky plans to find Giovanni, and George finally evolves into our powerhouse Golem. Now with Team Rocket finally dusted, we can finally push on towards Blackthorn City, but first we encounter Vinny, the Weeping Bell. Shortly afterwards we're jumped by Zane outside of Icy Cave, but that proves to be the scariest battle of the run so far. I got in feeling extremely confident due to the new additions to the team. We lead with George, who comfortably ends Porygon's lifespan after a couple of hit and miss magnitudes, after of which he introduces Lapras, the most locked in Loch Ness you've ever seen. I switch to Simon for the defensive coverage and immediately get put to sleep and confused, but after about 5 turns of sleeping, hitting myself in confusion and taking Insane Chip, I lose patience of staying in and switching to Gary, who it turns out can't take 2 hits from Surf. I YOLO knowing I can't really switch out and try landing a Hypnosis, which I do, but he swiftly wakes up after we hit a single Dream Eater and confuses us. Without too much to switch into, we do hit ourselves and we lose Gary to a Surf. Monica comes in to try and clean up with a Thunder Punch, as I don't want to try and risk landing the cross chop, and it somehow doesn't kill. Then we get confused by another Confuse Ray and end up hitting ourselves consecutively until, well, we die. Operation Thunder Punch continues to fail, with Klim coming in and failing to kill after landing a critical hit, and we somehow get confused again. I can't risk any more lives and let Pippa come in and clean up the remainder of Lapras's HP. Zaylin throws out a Breloom, but foolishly, I didn't know that Sky Uppercut hits you when you are flying, so we do take another L. Klim comfortably comes in and revenge kills the Breloom and lures in a Houndoom, which is mere fodder for George and his love of earth-shattering shenanigans. Finally, to rub salt in the wound, he throws out a Toxic Stool Umbreon our way, whose defense we gradually lower with Rock Smashes and eventually just flame wheel it back to 1999. After claiming 3 lives and probably my will to live, we do defeat Zane, but we're still blocked off from Black Form, which is apparently due to severe weather being caused by Suicune, so we've got to head back to Ecruteak to challenge Suicune for our first legendary encounter. But before said legendary encounter, we're overdue with a montage of mediocre Pokemon evolving. Here we see Victory Bell, Magneton and Donphan all join the team. But while they may look really cool, their movesets are quite frankly embarrassing. Just when we thought my day couldn't really get any worse, I'm subjected to doing several puzzles in the ruins of Alph. But we do encounter a Quagsire, which is pretty based. Ho-Oh then decides we're so good at puzzles that he graces us with his presence, and gives us the Clear Bell and the key to facing Suicune. With that, we trench on back to Ecruteak and challenge Suicune to stop the downpour over Johto. Due to the strength of legendaries though, I decide to just defeat them and not allow myself to catch them during this Nuzlocke, so naturally he dies to a couple of Razor Leafs from Vinny, and with that, Johto is saved again, and we can finally hit Ice Cave, where we catch Stu, the Sneasel, and enjoy even more puzzles for me to lose my mind over. After what feels like a never-ending and revolving door of story arcs and puzzles and an unfortunate loss of Golem in Icy Cave, we make it to Blackthorn City and challenge Claire in her onslaught of dragon types. At this point though, I'm not locked in and I forget to rearrange my team before the fight. I lead Victory Bell and as a result I miss a stun spot, so I quickly switch into Philip for his bulk, only to take a Hyper Beam straight to the trunk. I take the gamble and think that I can live a second beam, and thankfully manage to take it down with the strength. She quickly throws out her race though, Kingdra, so we pivot into Simon in an attempt to put him to sleep with a yawn so we can start boosting with Amnesia. We get to max special defense, only for Kingdra to wake up and crit and power us, so naturally I'm fuming right now, because not only does Kingdra live, but we're forced to sack a key member of the team. Simon's death however does allow Mickey to come in for free and slowly outgrind the Kingdra with paralysis and a combination of tri-attacks. This strategy follows into her second Dragonair, which works well until Hyper Potion spams forces us to switch out Mickey. Klim comes in and claims a kill, but doesn't really offer much outside of Iron Tail spam. And when after he gets low, I have to switch into Philip for the sack, but thankfully, she uses back-to-back Scary Faces and misses a Hyper Beam, which allows us to finish the battle without losing another member. A great cost though, we beat Claire and are one step closer to the Pokemon League. With a broken spirit and a disheveled team, we make our way to the Dragon's Den, where we thankfully manage to catch a Dratini. But that's just the start of everything. In order to get our 8th badge, we have to investigate the depths of the den, which has been infiltrated by what felt like an infinite number of Team Saturn grunts. After several floors and even more grunts, we find Axel, who's attempting to control Latias and Latios. His team are all electric types, and they get rollout swept by Philip in no time whatsoever, so that's pretty easy. Now for the scary part though. In order to stop Latios, we have to defeat him in battle, and since I can't flee and I can't catch him, we're in for a tough fight. I lead with Mickey for the type coverage and to land an instant Thunder Wave on him, but our tri-attacks just kinda bounce off of him and he begins to Dragon Dance. I attempt to Supersonic to counter the attack boost, but the Latios just won't seem to hit itself. I switch into Philip because Mickey feels like it's going nowhere due to its recover spam, but we take a hefty Luster Purge to the face. I attempt to roll out hoping that the power and the confusion might be able to carry us, but instead we die to a second Luster Purge. I switch back into Mickey and somehow he dies in one shot to a resisted Psychic crit. Now we have Vinny and a Distant Dream. We acid spam for a couple of turns and thank the heavens he gets paralysed and hits himself in confusion. So somehow, we live to fight another day. With Team Saturn's plan in ruins and the den secured, we can finally get our 8th badge from Claire and begin preparation for the Pokemon League. With Johto done and dusted, we charge headbound for the Pokemon League, with some notable encounters along the way in the form of Ponyo the Ponyta and Saul the Sea King. Despite Victory Road's best efforts, we make it to the league in one piece and finish grinding our latest squad, which sees the addition of Darwin the Dragonite, Odeon the Steelix, Manny the Machamp, and Henry the Kingdra in all of their glory. Now it's time to put the team to the test, starting with Will and his psychic type Pinatas. All of his team simply fail to pack any punches and go down to 1 or 2 hits. Annoyingly though, Klim gets frozen by an Executor, who ironically doesn't even have any arms.
Come on then! What? Have at you!
Luckily though, this frees up Odeon to come in and clean up the rest with a couple of crunches. Shortly after though, Koga follows suit and quite literally 4 of his Pokemon die in successive singular hits until he reveals his ever sturdy Crobat that also dies in, well, 2 hits. With 2 guys down and a spring in my step, we jog into Bruno's lair, who once again can't keep up with the awesome power of our new squad. We lead Darwin for some wing attack spam, and Hitmontop's Intimidate gets in the way, so we double pivot until we're back at full attack power and then let the carnage begin. And once again, nothing is surviving 1 to 2 attacks and Bruno falls just like the others. Finally, Karen comes into the fold. You'd think they would just get harder, but unfortunately this Karen should really just call the manager, because literally every single one of her Pokemon gets one-shot by Manny and his magnificent muscles. Now for the moment we've all been waiting for. All our training, death and heartbreak has brought us to the champion, Lance. Once again, an Intimidate lead ruins my day, but not even that won't save him from a quad-effective Thunder Punch straight to the gills. Next up though is an Aerodactyl, who literally can't lay a glove on Odeon's defensive prowess and quickly falls to a single Iron Tail. Next on the list is his Charizard, who quite literally bounces off Henry's doorstab and falls to a Surf. Now his big guns come out in Dragonite, who can't really do much damage against Odeon, but the use of full restores means that he gets some gradual chip damage on my guy. Dragonite 2 though comes out, and this is where things get a little bit dicey. This one whips out a Fire Blast that the first didn't know, and catches my Odeon by surprise. I now go into my Darwin thinking that I'd be faster, and that there's a chance I could do some big damage with a Dragon Breath, which does do a good amount of damage, but a Citrus Berry robs us of a chance of a 2-hit KO. I Dragon Rage to put it below half, just in case it didn't know Outrage and I could then follow up with another Dragon Breath, but he outrages me. I wrongfully switch out to try and save him, but even Manny's Bolt can't handle an Outrage and I'm forced to sack again. I forget that the safeguard is still active, and unfortunately I lose Vinny to another Fire Blast, and things are starting to look really bleak. I pray that Henry can kill the Twister, but despite stab and type advantage, it still can't break the bulk of this Dragonite and we go down to 2 Mons. Klim is the only member left who might be able to outspeed, and does, and he gets the KO, but a 3rd Dragonite comes out and I'm already feeling pretty dead. Luckily it blizzards us and doesn't hit too hard. Klim Iron Tails him for a few turns but only baits another full restore, and at that point, he's dead. Now it's up to Manny, but due to the recharge we're able to send that D-Knight packing with an Ice Punch and seal the deal over Lance and become the champion of Johto, and earning a coveted spot in the Pokemon Hall of Fame. New Barktown. Nothing possibly bad can happen in New Barktown, right? Wrong, because we've got to fight Brandon, the champion of Hoenn, with only 2 Pokemon left. So naturally, I'm terrified right now. Thankfully though, we still led with Manny and his Ice Punch quickly dispatches his Shiftry. He follows this up with a Swallow that tries to double team and still gets obliterated by a Thunder Punch. After which he follows up with Grumpig, which forces us to switch it to Darwin, and although Psychic does some nice damage, he ultimately falls to 2 wing attacks. Knowing I only have 2 Mons though left, I'm forced to stay in with Darwin and hope that a Dragon Breath might be able to kill this Camerupt, because his death will allow Manny to come in for free. So unfortunately, we do die to a Rock Slide. Manny comes back in though and cleans up with an Ice Punch, and now he has to solo his Swampert, which he does and kills with a couple of Cross Chops. Finally, his Aggron comes in and falls to a single Cross Chop, and we somehow make it out alive. With Brennan out of the way though, we receive an SS ticket and we're now game to travel to Kanto, but before that we need to rebuild a new team, which will see 5 new members enter the fold, in Quem, the Quagsire, Kevin, the Weezing, Horatio, the Noctowl, Evan, the Jolteon, and Vance, the Flygon. From a Trapinch we caught on a revisit to Blackthorn and Route 45 in some corrupted footage. After a long boat ride, we finally reach Vermilion City, and we can quickly stop by LT Surge's gym for a quick trouncing to give Quem a proper spin, who quite easily one-shots his entire team with a few Earthquakes. Shortly afterwards, we encounter Olivia, the Oddish, in Route 6 before discovering that Saffron has been overrun with Saturn Grunts. After another side sweeping, it turns out that Russell was using the Sylph Code to try and find the locations of legendary Pokemon and fleas. With Saffron free again, we can fight Sabrina, whose Psychic types fall flat to a couple of crunches from Vance. Her Alakazam is a bit more annoying though, but ultimately falls before a Mighty Thunder from Evan. Now on to Celadon, where the grass is supposedly greener, where we tackle Erica and her grass-type gym. She leads with Victory Bell, who can't touch Horatio, and quickly falls to a couple of psychics. Following that, she sends a Tangler our way, who dies to a single sludge from wheezing. To round things off though, she sends out Vileplume, who again can't threaten, and dies after a few exchanges of severe acid reflux. And with that, we've got ourselves the Rainbow Badge. As we take a break down Cycling Road, we get a couple of encounters in Felix the Fero and Mark the Muck at the end, just before landing in Fuchsia City for a 4th gym badge. But before we battle, I discover that a girl in a house gives us a random Charmander, which inspires me to go back and discover a free Squirtle we can get in Saffron. With these means a new team shakeup, where Charlie the Charizard enters the team. After getting stuck in what feels like Mr. Mime's dream dimension and having walked into several invisible walls, we're ready for Janine. She leads her Crobat, who tries to para-screech Charlie, but fails and dies to a couple of flamethrowers. Her Venomoth shortly suffers a similar torching, and then comes out Weezing number 1. Horatio deals with him fairly easily, but Weezing number 2 comes out, and fearful of an explosion, I use Hypnosis and miss, only to get, well, exploded on, and thus we lose Horatio. Lastly, Ariados comes in and gets zapped to a crisp by Evan's Juicy Joltage, and with that we've earned ourselves a Fog Badge. Now we can head to Lavender Town, where we save Mr. Fuji from a Gengar and we're also able to catch it, bringing Gerald into the fold. We scoot on over to the radio tower to discover that it's been taken over by Team Saturn. What a shock, am I right? After beating Russell again, Team Rocket storm the building and we discover that Rouge has actually taken over Team Rocket and is actually Russell's son. With our team now approaching the level cap, we introduce 3 new members in Serena the Blastoise, Olivia the Vileplume, and Gerard the Gengar, before making our way through to Cerulean. But before we do, we jump by 2 of the devs from the game. The first one looks a little bit dubious to say the least, but he does have some tough contenders to deal with. But we do manage to deal with his rather base team quite comfortably without losing any members of our own. That is, however, until the second one attacks and he doesn't heal our team before the battle. We lead with Flygon and attempt to weaken his shiny Noctowl with a couple of crunches, but after getting put to sleep by Hypnosis, I switch him in fear of losing him, and Charlie manages to come in and pick up the kill with a Flamethrower. Next, we switch Gerard into Gardevoir, which in hindsight was actually incredibly risky, but Lady Luck is kind of on our side and we do manage to kill it with a single Shadow Ball. Next up is his Feraligatr, so we switch into Olivia but struggle to get the kill due to its hard-hitting ice punches. After that is his Ampharos, who lures us to stay in and hits us with a hard-hitting Fire Punch. So we switch back into Vance, who immediately has to switch back out due to a crit. Now Gerard is back in and manages to claim another soul with another Shadow Ball. Now his Charizard comes in, and I have to kinda choose who to give up at this point, so I chose Olivia. I go back into Kelvin for his natural bulk, and he gets absolutely cooked. I do try and keep him alive by going into my Charizard of my own, but unfortunately we can't get the damage in and Charlie dies. I rely on Gerard for the 3rd time this match and he Hyper Potions, but I do manage to get the 2-hit KO with 2 Shadow Balls and recover the battle back slightly. Finally, he sends in his Sceptile, but I'm locked to staying in with a weakened bench, and I'm limited to banking on Shadow Ball spam for the win. Another 2 deaths and another close call, but as always, we move. We add Manny and Felix back to the team and charge on through to Cerulean City, but after finding the missing part for the power plant and catching Vernon, the Venonat, we're ready to battle Misty, who doesn't offer too much of a real threat. Her Golduck goes down fairly easily to a couple of Shadow Balls from Gerard, and her Quagsire follows suit by falling to the hands of Serena and her Ice Punches. Lapras comes in and flatlines to the hands of Manny with a devastating Cross Chop, but Starmie does catch us off guard and claim Vance's life with a sneaky Ice Beam. But I honestly had no better switch-ins, and I had to chance her not having the Ice Beam, because my whole team had taken a lot of chip at this point. Gerard comes back in once more and finishes off Misty with a Shadow Ball, earning us the Cascade Badge. With Misty down and out, it's time to move on to the final chapter of Kanto, which has been locked off by a Snorlax for what feels like a millennium. With the power of radio, we finally confront the sleeping giant and attempt to catch it, but not very easily. This thing broke out of so many Ultra Balls that I had to throw a Master Ball at it, because I didn't really think I was going to use it against any legendaries. Thus, introducing Sam, the Snorlax, to the team. This was followed up shortly by an encounter in Diglett Cave, which was, you guessed it, a Diglett named Doug. But before moving gymward, we discovered that this friendly old timer gives us the 3rd and final of our Kanto starters in Bulbasaur, who we named Beatrice. With a few new members in the team ready and rearing to go, I decided to go to Cinnabar first in case there's any more interesting encounters on the way before I started grinding again. When we get there though, we discover that Team Saturn have infiltrated a cave in search of the Reggies, but after one final swatting, Russell announces that they're finally going to disband as a team and give up hunting the legendary Pokemon. With Team Saturn finally out of the picture, we're good to tackle the Cinnabar and Pewter City gyms. Unfortunately though, they didn't put up much of a fight in the slightest, and basically everything got one-banged by Serena, earning us 2 extremely easy gym badges. With 15 badges in our pocket, it's time for a return to Viridian City to battle Blue for our final Kanto badge. He leads his Pidgeot, and although we have the type disadvantage, I risk staying in so that I can kill it with a couple of ice punches. Next up is his Alakazam, who forces a swift switch into Sam for his bulk. But he does give us a few free turns by deciding to recover at full health and disable before we've even moved, and eventually goes down after taking a couple of devastating headbutts. Up next is his Exeggutor, who seeds us but gets a frosty punch to the face in return and catches a very quick freeze, suddenly sealing its demise. Rhydon comes out next and I switch into Quem, who takes an Earthquake quite comfortably and pays him back with a one-shotting Surf. Gyarados comes up next and tries to threaten us with a Hyper Beam, but Evan is having none of it and he quickly turns him into a glorified fish stick, leaving Blue with only his Arcanine left. His Arcanine keeps on roaring my team and switching out my mons, which gets really annoying, but after Beatrice puts him to sleep, Manny comes in and cleans him up with a Cross Chop and Thunder Punch combo and wins us our final badge. With 16 badges in our pocket, we rush back to Pallet Town to speak to Oak, who finally gives us passage to the infamous Mount Silver to challenge Red, the Pokemon Master and the Kanto Champion. When we arrive at Mount Silver, we're bombarded by Zane once again, giving us one final test of rivalry. He leads his Breloom, so naturally we Ice Punch it and manage to catch another lucky freeze, quickly seeing off this potential threat nice and early. Up next is Porygon 2, which was a weird choice to battle a Machamp, and it dies quite expectedly to a single Cross Chop. He continues the same trend with both Lapras and Houndoom, who both deservedly meet the same fate and die to another Cross Chop Masterclass. He finally throws out a Heracross our way, which is a bit scary, so we send Kelvin out and hope his natural bulk can see the battle through. In this moment though, I make a proper goober move and Toxic him, forgetting that he could have Guts as an ability, and he punishes me hard by using his Sword Stance. After seeing how much of a resisted Brick Break does, I attempt to use Explosion, but I die to a Rock Slide in the process. Now it's Squeaky Bum time, and I have a 50-50 in gambling to hit it with a Thunder or to rack up poison damage with Dig. I decide to dig, and the plan almost works, but he's left on a few HP after the last round of Toxic. Now I have to gamble on hitting a Thunder or two, and thankfully, between the Toxic doubling up and some chip damage from headbutts, I'm able to get some free damage off with digs and finally see out the kill. Lastly, we have Umbreon, with an annoying Toxic Stall set. Thankfully though, Manny is burnt, which puts an end to any shenanigans since it's simply a waiting game for Cross Chop to land and win us the battle. Upon entering Mount Silver, our sloppy loss of Kevin is quickly rewarded by encountering Larvitar, who we managed to catch and add to the squad. I scour the cave further, and there's no sign of Red, only 3 oldies called Mr. R, Mr. G and Mr. H, who tell me that Red isn't actually here, and suggest that I re-battle the Elite Four.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Fully expecting the worst, I prepare my team for one final adventure where we evolve Tyrone into Tyranitar and make final preparations and decide on our final team for the league. And with that, it's time. We start off with Will and his revamped arsenal of Psychic Goobers. I decide to lead with Gengar to make use of his speed, and so I don't have to worry about switching into his Frail Bones later and get in some sweet Shadow Ball spam. Thankfully, Will hasn't improved much at all and still can't handle Gengar's shady balls. Espeon's speed however gives us a minor fright, so Tyrone comes in to block his typing and KO it with a crunch. A Metagross follows up, which again is a little spooky, but it can't handle a couple of Earthquakes from Quem. And then Tyrone comes back out to clean up the Gardevoir and Alakazam with a couple of hard hitting crunches. One member down without any losses, and we're off to a good start. Next up is Koga. We lead with Quem for the ground type coverage, and he sends out his Nidoking. Naturally, we exchange Earthquakes, and with mine being the stronger one, we put him in range of needing to Hyper Potion and eat his comfortably. After baiting his potions, I make the Giga Brain play to switch into Gerard to avoid an obvious Earthquake, and avoid taking unnecessary chip on Quem. That way we can outspeed next turn and KO with a Shadow Ball. Next up is his Venomoth, but for every big brain play, there's also a small brain one. I decide to stay in with Gengar to get some big chip, but I forget that Venomoth packs Psychic and end up taking some big damage on Gerard. Gerard does tank though and manages to follow up with another Shadow Ball and just about manages to get the KO. Koga then throws Crobat out our way, so we countered this typing with Tyrone, who quickly eats a Sludge Bomb and swats him aside with a single Rock Slide. Tentacruel comes out next, and due to its odd typing, I opt to stay in and go for the Earthquake, knowing that Sandstorm will bulk up our special defense. He Sword Stances, but oddly follows up with a Surf and goes down to a second Earthquake. Next up is his Muck. Here, I'm torn with either sacking Tyrone or switching into Quem, who had the potential to get 2-hit KO'd after a switch. I boldly make the decision to stay in because I was scared of a potential Acid Armor minimize set, and I get rewarded massively and get off a big Earthquake as he uses Curse, and manage to claim the kill on the second Earthquake. His final one is Wheezing. We switch into Quem because I wanted her Damp ability to cover a potential explosion, but a Surf is well out of a 2-hit KO range, so we gamble into switching back into Gerard, who tanks a Sludge Bomb and finishes off the battle with a Shadow Ball. A nervy battle, but we do manage to get out unscathed once again. Now it's Bruno time, and the only thing scarier than his 6-pack are his 6 Pokemon. He leads with Hariyama, and I lead with Gerard to avoid any hard-hitting fighting types, which in turn forces him to Ice Punch me and take big damage from a Shadow Ball, resulting in an easy 2-hit KO. He follows up with his Medicham, who stupidly dies to a single hit, and course corrects this by sending in Steelix. Quem is the obvious switch here and gets a huge crit, taking it down in 1, which allows Machamp in, and I don't really have an adequate switch in. I switch to Felix, and luckily he misses with a Cross Chop, which probably saved his life. I go for the Drill Peck and it does some good damage as he bulks up, which in turn makes it a roll to kill, but luckily Felix does pull through and deals with that threat quickly. Next up is Heracross, so we just Drill Peck him into the next Millennium and put him down to his last Pokemon, Blaziken, who somehow dies to a single Drill Peck, and we win the battle pretty calmly. Next on our hit list is Karen, and I'm going into this one feeling extra confident. I lead with Manny, knowing that she's a Dark-type trainer. She predictably leads her Umbreon, and we're in a comfortable spot to just freely cross-chop, but unfortunately, we get a really low roll and get poisoned as a result. She heals her Umbreon, but unsurprisingly we manage to kill it on the second with a Guts boost. Now she sends in Wobbuffet, and I'm locked in with a Shadow Tag and terrified of a counter. I go for an Ice Punch and pray for a roll that won't kill me, or a lucky freeze, and surprisingly, she safeguards. With the Toxic slowly racking up, I'm expecting to die, but thankfully it uses Mirror Coat and I manage to finish it off with another Ice Punch, somehow escaping with my life. Next up is a Gengar, who can't touch Sam in any capacity and slowly goes down to a couple of Ice Punches and an Explosion, which we eat. Oddly, she sends in a Vileplume next, who we decide to stay in against and try to Ice Punch. She does Sleep Powder us, but we're saved by a Lumberry that we've been holding since we caught Sam. Gerard comes in shortly after though and cleans up the kill with a Shadow Ball. Next up is her Houndoom, who we hard counter with Tyrone and put to rest with a single Earthquake. All that's left now is her own Tyranitar. I confidently switch into Quem expecting her to answer it, but we switch into a Dragon Dance and take a huge crunch, and an EQ can't kill in return. Unfortunately, I have to sack Felix here to allow Gerard back in. Knowing I can't take any chances, I risk outspeeding a +1 Tyranitar and go for the Destiny Bond. Luckily, we do outspeed, and Gerard goes down but does take Tyranitar with it, winning us the battle, but at a great cost. Our clean run is over, but with 4 Mons left, we're ready to take on Lance and try and win the Pokemon League for a second time. It all comes down to this. History repeats itself and we both lead the same as our first encounter. And just like before, Gyarados drops after a couple of electrifying Thunder Punches from Manny. Lance sends out his first Dragonite, and I stay in to scout the Ice Punch damage and end up claiming a lucky crit, giving us an immaculate start to this battle. Up next is a Flygon, who just about lives another Ice Punch, but we get the freeze! We're getting insanely lucky, so I switch out predicting a full restore and to reset our attack from the Intimidate, and Sam comes in and continues to Ice Punch spam absolutely everything. After Flygon goes down, we get intimidated once again as Salamence comes in, and we take a hefty Brick Break. But we do manage to get some big damage in and another freeze, allowing us to 2-hit KO him without switching. Charizard comes out next, so naturally we switch it to Tyrone to wall both of his typings. We take a Fire Blast and a follow-up Earthquake and kill it with a single Rock Slide. His final mon is Kingdra, which is a bit of a problematic typing, but we switch into Sam to scout and comfortably tank a Surf. And we headbutt it back in return, but it does very little damage. so I stay in and attempt to luck out with the power from a Thunder Punch. Here, I'm forced to make a desperate switch into Manny, as I don't really want to sack Sam at this point. Thankfully, we switch directly into a Toxic, which also triggers our Guts boost and gives us the steam we need for Manny to finish off this pesky Kingdra with a single cross chop. And with that, we've done it. We're the second time champion and we're officially ready to battle Pokemon Master Red. After a little bit of grinding and forward thinking, we pieced together our final team of 6 with the options left available. With a brand new team and the Pokemon League officially dismantled, it's time to revisit Mount Silver for one final rodeo. We traverse the cave with ease, and thankfully, this time there's no random old men to tell me to go somewhere else. We eventually find Red, and a part of me is surprised that he's even actually there, and not some sort of mirage. And you know what that means. It all comes down to this. Red leads with his signature Pikachu, so I rightfully lead Quem to try and wall it. He launches off a quick attack which quickly eases any of my nerves about him having a grass type move up his sleeve, and I punch it right back with an Earthquake and take it out in one hit. Next on the list is his Venusaur, but I don't really have an ideal check to this, so I send in Super Sam to tank a Giga Drain. He begins to charge a Solar Beam, and I go for the Ice Punch in hopes of getting a cheeky freeze again, but I wasn't so lucky this time. Sam absolutely tanks the Solar Beam and manages to clean up with a second Ice Punch. At this point, Blastoise comes out, so we pivot into Beatrice to soak up any water type attacks and fire back with a Sleep Powder, just in case he switches. Once he's asleep though, we use that free time to try and charge up a Solar Beam. Only he wakes up and hits us with a Blizzard that crits us, and it one-shots us. Now it's up to Manny. We tank a Blizzard and slap it right back with a Thunder Punch, and we get a power in return, which means that we can outspeed it and clean it up with the second one. Next up, Espeon comes out, and just like against Will, we switch into Tyrone to completely wall it and decimate it with a Crunch. But apparently we still have sand in our eyes and we miss, so we go again and we manage to beat it on the second attempt. He follows that up with a Snorlax of his own. I go for the Crunch to scout some damage and try to avoid missing with a Rock Slide, and we end up doing a healthy 50%, but he does rest, but that gives us 2 free turns to 2-hit KO it with a couple more Crunches. Last but not least is his Charizard, who is painfully outclassed by Tyrone and falls to a singular Rock Slide. And we've done it. We've beaten the Kanto champion and beaten our Hardcore Nuzlocke. Now, there is a tiny bit more story to this game, but unfortunately the post-game remains unfinished, and I didn't feel like that tiny bit of extra story to do with Team Rocket added much beyond defeating Red. So with that being said, if you'd like to see that tiny bit of extra footage in the future as a smaller video, then let me know down below and I can do that for you. A lot of love and work went into this video, so if you enjoyed it, then please leave a like and let me know, and subscribe for more. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.